Right, welcome everyone to the next episode of our building a browser-based MMO game. And so we are doing things a little different this time for this video because on the previous three videos, it was basically a redaction of my live Twitch stream. And as much as I enjoy sharing what we do on Twitch or what I do on Twitch, it's a 3-hour stream on Twitch, and then to do post-production on the vid to get it ready for YouTube, cutting it all down. It's the best part of 8 hours, and essentially it's the same information. So rather than do that, I feel I can spend more time on Twitch, and then what I'll do in this video for YouTube is I'll just summarize what we've done. So if you want to kind of see the workings out and the brainstorming aspect of what I'm doing, then the Twitch stream is definitely the one to do, and they're at regular times. Whereas the YouTube is just a summary of what I've done. So hopefully that makes sense. It also means the YouTube video is a lot shorter. It's not 1-2 hours long like the previous ones have been. Hopefully this will be wrapped up very short. But I am going to go through each of the things I've done and go through a bit of the thought process behind it as well. So you just got a kind of an idea of what's going on. But again, I would strongly recommend, if you want to know more about this, join us on Twitch. It's you can see you can see the brain literally working, as I'm sat there, and it's painful sometimes even for me. But that's what this stream is about. Not the actual doing it, but the thinking through and whatnot. Okay, so let's just summarise what we've done. I've done a git status here of where we are. Now, one thing I will say is that we'd left the code on the last stream in an unfinished state, in the sense that the tests didn't pass. So if you can see here, I've got 9 failing tests. So what happened there? That basically is because I decided I was getting fed up with manually creating a lot of stuff. Now that we're running scripts in the live environment or the local dev environment as opposed to the testing environment, I was just getting kind of a bit fed up of dealing with next to no data in that environment, because I wasn't pulling in, I wasn't doing all the factories, because obviously I don't want factories in what will ultimately be a live environment. So I decided to copy something from one of my previous incarnations of the game, and that was to introduce a seeder file. So the seeder file is what I've used to kind of initially populate the data of the game when we first install the game. Now, some of the stuff we'll come back to another time, because it will come back to it as and when the tests dictate. So don't worry about the commented out stuff. But you can see here, for example, I've got a list of resources and whether they can be mined. I think I might have done that already, actually. If not, I did it in this stream. And I think I did it in this last stream, which then prompted me to do the rest of the seeder file. So either way, this is a relatively new thing. Now, the other thing I've added is locations. So this is all UK based on information I've got that we sourced from the UK. And I started off alphabetically. Oh, they're going to be the clubs, the drone clubs. We'll come back to them another time. I started off alphabetically with the locations and realised that they were just scattered all over the country and whatnot. So I just thought, this isn't going to work. So I decided just to concentrate on the Merseyside area. And I've just picked out the train stations, in that vicinity. So you've got Boothall, Broad Green, up Birkdale and Southport is some of the stations on there. And just so that the drones, because drones, when they fly, they'll have that limited range. It's only going to be, a matter of 5-10 kilometres, depending on the drone. So it kind of all needs to be in the vicinity. So these are all within the Merseyside area. So that's the locations. Let's see, what else do we have in here? Recipes we'll come back to another time. And that's it. Okay. So yeah, what I've done is I've just created a load of locations so that when we produce the static item, there we go. So a static item is an item that's created at a given location with the intention of it being picked up and transported to its destination in order for the player to get the points that are associated with that item. Now, I think before the last video, we had the original test. We had this store the static item. So, or was it just called item? I don't know, because there was a bit of a name change, wasn't it? So this basically tests. Let's go through this test. I think this was one of the static item store tests. Yeah, so this is one of the tests we've at least modified, if not created. So we'll go on to the second test, because that first one's just to check the redirect. A static item can be stored and returned. So we create the static item as a raw array, so it doesn't populate the database. We then post to the static items endpoint with that data. And what we're expecting is the item show page, that's fine, that it has an item, and that it has the following 4 properties: from, location, to, and resource. So each of these, so remember, the from and the location is the same when it starts. So if I was to create a static item in Southport, then the from would be Southport and the location would be Southport, because that's where it currently is. So that's kind of what makes sense with that. I know I've done it as different ones, but I think it's because the factory creates the same one. Let me just try that actually. If I go to the static item factory, yeah, so the from and the location return the same item, which is correct, because when it first starts, that is where it's from. So that's okay. Let's go back to the test. I've lost the test. Okay, and then we have the to, which is obviously the destination, and the resource that the item actually is. So that kind of makes sense. They're the 4 things that a static item needs in order for it to exist. And we've also asserted that the drone and user are not set at that point, because it doesn't belong to a drone and it doesn't belong to a user until a drone comes along and picks it up. Then we can go through the process of it being a active item, or whatever we decide to call it. So I don't know whether this test passes actually. This test may pass. Oh no, okay, so that one didn't pass. Base item store test, base item store test, trip store test, static item store test, latitude. Right, okay. So the reason why these are failing is because of the locations. So up to now, let me just bring the location table up. Now, I think I put these in. So if I've put these in, then, and it's still failing to do the default value, then the seeder, no, it's not the seeder, because it's the test, isn't it? So anyway, in the next video, I've got to go through all these tests and find out what's going on. It's just because I've introduced the seeder file, and I'm happy with that, because it will probably take me half an hour to do that, but it'll be a job worth doing going forward. So yeah, that's the seeder file. Let's have a look at what else was on the... because I've done the seeder file, I've also done the seeder, what they called, scripts. So I've called this live seeder. Now, just the way I do my seeders is I kind of have 2. I have a demo seeder and a live seeder. Now, I haven't got demo seeder yet, because the only thing I'm putting in as demo data is the user. And I thought, well, I'll just leave it in here for now. But eventually, I could convert this perhaps to the admin user, maybe, so that technically it's not demo data. And I could do that as part of the setup here, give it a proper username, password, and whatnot. But I'm not sure about that just yet. But for the time being, I'm not creating a demo seeder. But then I call a live seeder, and the live seeder is everything I will want in the final game. So in the live seeder, this is where the seeder values from the seeder file are called in, because you can see here, I get the resources, for example, and then for each resource, I create it in the database. I get the locations. For each location, I create it in the database. Sorry, this one here. And then if the location has a station associated with it, then the station gets created, it gets associated to that location. So again, as I say, I've got to tidy up the code, but that's what these demo seeders are doing. They're just giving me some initial data that I can use for when I start running the scripts in the test rather than in the dev environment rather than in the test. Okay, so what else is on the? Let's have a look here. So we've got the database. We've made some alterations to the migrations. Let's just have a look at one of these. So create locations table. Did we have that? Okay, yeah, so that's, you can see by the green bar here, PHP Storm's highlighting that for me. It's these 4 fields which we've added, which we didn't have before. Let's see what are the other ones? Create stations. Okay, so we've added a station name and we've added a number of platforms. Now, we'll come back to that in a second. There's a reason why I've put the number of platforms in. And the resources, we've just added the name. So again, we've added those. We've just kind of populated the data out a bit more based on the seeder data. We will write some tests just to kind of verify that data, some like after the fact tests, but that's fine. So what else have we got in here? User update test. What did we do with that? Oh, I think I just changed the name from, what was it called before? Was it, yeah, associated user to validated user, because all we need to check is that the user has validated their email address, because by default, at that point, until they go through the onboarding, their rigs value will be set to 0. So they won't come back on the script that looks for those users anyway. So I just changed that to validated user. So that's all I did on that. Let's see what else is blue on here. The validated user index test. Okay. I think again I just changed the name from associated users to validated users on the URL. So again, no major change there. Let's see what else is on here. Static item controller. Oh, okay. So I think this is, I kind of could have left this on the web file, the roots web, because I have with the other stuff that is is mainly for the purposes of the command line. But for some reason I decided to move this into its own controller. But this is only going to get used by the command line. So in actual fact, this controller itself is not going to get used. What will happen is the command line will just call this function with these parameters. And these parameters are going to be derived by the vacant location call here. So the vacant location, in fact, I've added that as a service, haven't I? The vacant location where we get vacant locations. So the vacant location controller just does that, and that's where the platforms come in. So if we have a look at the logic, we're getting the platforms, the ID and the platforms. So that's from the location ID and the station platforms, which was a number, if you remember. From the locations joining the stations. Okay, well, that's fair enough. We're also getting the number of items at the location where the items are not associated to a user. So remember, if a user picks up an item, goes somewhere and drops it off, but it's not dropped off at where the item is going to its destination, it's basically being held by the user in limbo at that point. So it will still belong to the user, and at some point in the game that will come into play. I haven't quite worked out how yet. One thing I had was that people had the opportunity to steal an item or something, some kind of perk that they can get. If that's the case, then the user ID won't be null. So we're not looking for those items. We're only looking for items where the user is null, because they will be pre-generated items that haven't yet been picked up at that station. So when we've got them, we call that item count. So when we've got that, we are then, where exists, select star from stations, where the location ID equals the station. Okay, so we're checking that it has a station. And then we group by the station ID and the number of platforms, where the items count, which is this here, where the number of items that are at that station is less than the number of platforms at that station. So essentially what this logic is saying is, give me a list of all the locations that have a station where the current number of items not owned by anyone at that station is less than the number of platforms the station has. And the pseudo logic is that you can only have up to as many items at a station that are ready to be picked up as there are platforms. So the bigger the station, the more items there are to pick from, or the more chance of there being available items to pick from. So that's my rationale behind that. There was no kind of deep game logic behind that, other than I just wanted to add another variable into the game and see what happens with that. So that's what that code is. It gets those stations. When it's got those list of stations, it will then pass in the stations. So we are passing in. Okay, so at this point we're passing in the 4 items to create an item. Oh, it goes into the StoreStaticItem service, which is another service. StoreStaticItem. Okay, so this is getting stored at that, which is StoreStaticItem request. So yeah, this is getting called from the controller endpoints or the routes file. So what the next step to do here is to create that console command. Oh, it looks like I've started on that. Oh, look at that. It looks like I've already started on that. I wonder then if the reason why what I was heading for on the stream was to get it to the point where these scripts run. Okay, so we've got sale artisan migrate fresh seed. So if I go sale artisan store static items, yeah, so that script works. So I've got this working to a point where the scripts work, not necessarily where the tests are working. But I haven't committed the code, so that's okay. See if base items still work. Yeah, so doesn't apparently be an error there. What I'm going to do, just off screen, I'm just going to load up the database. I don't have a sharing screen for the database, so just bear with me a second. Okay, there are 51 items. There are 51 stations in the table. Okay, so what that means is that it did create 51 items at the different stations. Now, most of those stations have platforms of 2, except for Southport, which I've got as 7. So if I run that script again, yeah, 102. So now every 1 bar Southport now has its maximum. So if I run the script again, what I might do actually is return the value of rows here. Let's run it again. Yeah, 51. Okay. So at least now you can see what's going on. So let me run. Let's start at the beginning. We run the migration to clear it out. We'll run static items. Now remember, there's 51 stations that have no items in them, so we get 51 items. There's still 51 items that have 1 item, and they all have a minimum of 2 as a capacity. Or I should say there is a minimum 2 as a capacity. So we get another 51. Now from now on, there's only 1 item, 1 station that has more than 2 platforms, which is Southport. So now this should return 1. And there we go. And that will keep doing that. 4, 5, 6, 7. So that'll keep doing that. Now it should be 0. There we go, 0. So yeah, so that script works. So that can run probably every minute, which means that the items that are at the stations are being refreshed so that more players can pick up items regularly. And I'm kind of thinking that if there's I don't know how many stations, there's probably about 1,000 or so stations in the whole UK. So that's going to be 1,000 a minute potentially can be created if they're not already picked up. So let me just undo all this here. Okay, so that works. So the 2 scripts, the static items and the base items, are fine. I just need to get the seeder to pass the tests, basically. I don't think there's anything else that I've done in this video that, in this stream, this last stream, that is of major consequence. I think that's it. That's a summary of what we've done in the last stream. If you're happy just to watch these summaries on YouTube, then look out for the next one soon. I'll try and do it after every stream that I do. If you want to actually see the live stream and be a part of it, come on the chat, give us a hand, especially when we get to the design side of things. I'm definitely going to need some input on that and really appreciate any input from anyone on that. But for now, thanks for watching this video. I hope that this abbreviated format is a much better version for YouTube watchers, and you kind of get a better gist of what's going on. For now, thanks for watching. If you liked the video, please click the like button. Hopefully I'll see you on the Twitch stream, or if not, I'll see you on the next video. Bye for now.